this is Brittany here with your art fail of the week, and this week I am doing another fan art. I had this idea a while ago to do a bunch of Patronus animals from Harry Potter. But today I am starting out with the well-known Stag Patronus from Harry Potter. And like I did with previous fan art, I started out in my watercolor sketchbook and sketched out different types of stags to then figure out what position and pose I wanted to do in the finished art, and also play around with the watercolor colors that I own and figure out basically where I wanted to go with this fan art in a larger completed page. And here is where I start playing around with watercolor, the different blues that I have, trying to figure out how lightly I want to lay down the color, what colors I want to use, how do I want to show the Patronus as a see-through magical object, almost like wispy, or how I want to paint that. Looking back, I did not try to go back in my Harry Potter books and look up the book description for the Patronus animals, which I kind of wish I would have done. I kind of just have like how it appears in the movies to go off of, so that kind of doesn't give me a lot of creative freedom like I probably could have gotten just based on the book description. So maybe in a follow-up video, when I figure out what other Patronus to create, I will actually have looked in the book and figured out, like, maybe if it's Luna Lovegood's Patronus or one other side character's Patronus, what it would look like based on what animal it is, and kind of just the book description when it appears. moving on to the final fan art, I taped out my corners and added some tape on top of the white tape I used because that tends to come up more than that green tape, but that green tape pulls up on the actual page, I've discovered. So I went and tried this instead to see if that would stop the page from being ripped and also to get that nice portrait square that looks nice when you're all finished with your painting. And as you can see, I chose to do more of a frontal view of the stag. And here I am just lightly putting in a basic blue layer around. So here is actually where I start going in a little darker, and I kind of wished I would have still stuck with a lighter layer first. Kind of went too crazy going into the darks first, because with watercolor especially, if you go in with dark paint, less water to thin that out, you can't really cover that up. You have to start out doing layers very lightly, and also the paper only takes so many layers. So I think maybe that's where my thoughts were going, that it's like, okay, well, I only have like 3 to 4 layers of watercolor I can do, so I'm just gonna, I guess, speed up the process. But in the past, I've just fixed that layer issue by going in with colored pencil and blending it out more, or using more of a mixed media approach. But this time I didn't really think ahead to do that. And here I think is where I get a little too crazy on the background, trying to create like the magical wisps. It ends up being a little busier than intended. I wanted to create just the idea of this magic behind it, kind of like in the movie, since that's really what my brain was going off of as sort of a imagination reference. But I kind of wish I would have lessened the background a little bit, but it ended up being that it just became kind of a tie-dye blue background almost by the end. So it's not too horrible, it just wasn't the idea I kind of originally was going for with the background. I think I also realized that there would have been too much white in the background, so I probably needed to do a wash of like a gray or something in the background before I laid the blue magical dust or whatever behind the Stag Patronus. And I did mention earlier that I use colored pencils in previous works. These colored pencils aren't just regular colored pencils, they're watercolor pencils. So they're actually water soluble, so when I use them and put markings on the page, if I put water on top of them, or if I lay down water first and then colored with the colored pencil, it would make them water soluble, so it would basically turn them into a watercolor paint. So that's how I got a little more detail in this specific fan art. And here I start to go even darker with the stag's body because I realized that the background was kind of making stuff look a little bit muddied surrounding him. I know I usually would do the outline, but I didn't think just doing the outline would make it not so muddy looking based on the fact that I'm using a lot of the same blues and purples, and I just wanted it to stand out more. And underneath his feet he needed something, so I kind of gave the idea of the pond that does show up in this scene with the first Stag Patronus that you see in the books and movies. It's around a lake. And the tape did actually function the way I wanted it to this time, so I'll probably try this method again because none of the paper ripped this time. And at this point I looked at my painting and it wasn't quite what I wanted it to be, so I brought out some colored pencils. Like I mentioned before, these are not the watercolor pencils, these are colored pencils, and I put different blues in it to make that stag even darker, and I also ended up outlining the stag in a fine line marker as well. And I am finishing up this drawing, so if you really enjoyed watching this fan art video, please give a like so that other people can find it and see it and maybe enjoy it as well. Also subscribe for more fan art videos, different art videos. If you're like watching calm art videos, my channel is one for you. And also, because I plan on following up with more Patronus fan art. Please leave in the comments what your favorite Patronus from the books is, maybe whose Patronus you would want me to draw next, or maybe to come up with some other animal into a Patronus. And thank you so much for watching this video, and I hope to see you in next week's video.